for us to continue working on how to develop. Secondly, we are thinking how to despite the Russians are bombing our connectivity in different cities, including capital, we are thinking how to establish a network of satellite connections. One of them is for sure is Starlink, but what we would need is the companies are always online, and one of the requests which is coming from Ukraine these times as humanitarian group which has been established recently, what my colleague said, is applying to get a satellite connection for this short period of time. Satellite phones, that might be also a good opportunity to even help Ukrainian companies whom you're working with. It's also important to have a connection with them. Then is the point that we also started to discuss with within the industrial dialogue between Ukraine and the EU, the issue of supplying the list of most important and critical raw materials or some parts of the what are needed for the production, not only for military but those which are used for civil protection. And for sure, these days we are feeling the lack of necessary, I would say, necessary key materials like or equipment like generators, which might help people to survive this period of time or to keep production. So one of the biggest challenges in the war, as we understand right now, is to have enough helmets and to have enough armor vest for not only for the army but for the civilians who might be protected these days. And what we see from Europe currently is not so much of those, and we started to think how to even produce those and what might be the solution. So these parts are critical as well, and it's more important that business across Europe also produce such kind of goods more than they planned to do it like 2 weeks ago generally for the overall annual planning. That's what might be the biggest challenge. And also
Anatolii, may I ask you on that also? These requests, are they, let's say, is the information going out?
Yes.
What channels you use? I mean, but the problems your embassy here had with PayPal and Stripe, I got from Twitter. So I just followed the Twitter and got. But do you think that you get adequate channels to get your message across? That how do you send out information what you need? Are you happy with those channels right now?
Okay, so let me shortly brief. So we have established two channels actually, like a hotline, one for ordinary people just to collect the needs where they feel that they need something, and the second hotline is for all international partners and volunteers who around the world would like to help us. Those are communicated, but as you asked, probably not enough so far, and must be communicated more. We use our network of embassies abroad just to communicate the list of needs, and we also communicate the list of needs through international organizations. That was the key point of entrance for any kind of needs, like OCHA, the most UN agency responsible for any humanitarian catastrophe. And so we are working with them. We are working with the European Commission, with their humanitarian response unit, and we are working also separately with each government of each country which is friendly to Ukraine. So we are communicating it, but I do feel that since it's only 7 days, some things are not communicated enough and not communicated broadly, and still I would underline that this is something new that no one expected enough, I mean from civilian part, and the further improvements will follow for sure, and it will be more communication. We are working with everyone who might want to help Ukraine. Over. So I will pass the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. I even recommend one of the recommendations is that, as most of the people here are from different trade promotion or investment agencies, that this kind of a list what you need in Ukraine can be also easily distributed through those channels on the websites, and also all the companies in different countries that they at least get information quickly what Ukraine needs. But maybe Igor, you go next because you are next door as well and you know maybe better what's happening and what you can do.
Yeah. Hello, dear colleagues, participants. Thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Igor Ștefaneț. I'm head of investment attraction and protection department at our agency. And I know that this moment are really hard for us and for our neighbors. Please allow to express our support. We are facing also a lot of pressure as the neighbors of our friends, and it's a risk for our national security and also for humanitarian crisis in the region. We at the moment have a state of emergency at the national level that gives the possibility to our government to react very quickly. We have create a special website, dopomoga.gov.md, to help to all the refugees from Ukraine. At the moment, I think we already have more than 100,000 refugees coming to Moldova. 70% are remaining in the Republic of Moldova. We have managed to provide a lot of support. By the way, a lot of free of charge. Our nation got united and helping a lot with transport, accommodation, medical assistance, everything. We are also collecting money for them. We are trying to help. We, as an agency, also have an action plan to support all the Ukraine companies temporarily. We must mention temporarily to come to Moldova and with their employees to work and to earn money and to produce the supply chain to deliver all the contracts. Also, we have changed quickly our legislation. And we are permitting the Ukrainian citizens to be involved and to become employees in our company, also to help them to earn money and to be part of the economy. Second, we are creating working groups or task groups at every economic sector with each economic business association. For example, I discussed with IT Business Association. We are inviting the IT companies and IT Association from Vinica. We are helping them with transportation, also with giving them the spaces to work here in the Republic of Moldova and to continue. Once again, I want to mention that's temporary because we believe soon everything will be peace and Ukraine will be a growing economic country. Also, we would like to raise an idea and to create an working group on all IPAs in the region from Estonia coming to the south to Bulgaria, and to give all our spaces, free economic zones, industrial platforms for the potential companies who would like to produce and to deliver to Ukraine or to deliver goods and to react on the new economic order. We would like to invite all of them in a new working group, a new economic order, and to have a fruitful discussion. And we are ready also to help ITC with the new mobile clinic production in Moldova. We already have managed to find several industrial spaces near our common border with Ukraine, so we are ready also to help with them to deliver fast these medical clinical devices. And one of the most important things that we would like also to share is we must be very correct in communication. We would like to also to have a strategic communication in all the IPAs. As I mentioned, that we would like to support Ukraine, not to steal their workforce or investors, but we would like temporarily to help with establishing them here in order to help to produce. Then we'll be more than happy to give them the chance to return back to Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Maybe I turn next to Raido, my countryman. One recommendation again for all the trade promotion agencies around the world is that what I got from the session I attended in the morning, that what I said before, that some companies in Ukraine still can, be operational, so that still business going on, they can provide work to people and do what they do. But of course, the thing is that their potential customers are hesitant. So that one thing what maybe we can do jointly is that also provide export credits so that governments can also guarantee some of the, let's say, purchases that companies and governments buy from Ukraine. So that this is also something that we would do, and I recommend that you go through your channels in your respective countries and also see if we can set up this quickly as well, because this conversation also is about supply chains, keeping the economy as resilient as possible despite the difficulties and the situation. But Raido, please.
Yes, thank you. And I would like to express our support to our Ukrainian friends and all the nation of Ukraine, Estonia here. And thank you all for the solidarity and standing together for the democracy. And let's hopefully can find solutions here from the economic departments as well from our countries. But I'm representing Estonian investment agency, so we're part of the trade mission and in different transactions. We're really trying to think along how we can help. And I would like to recognize a few of the ideas that Moldova has already harnessed and already implementing. So there's lessons to learn as well, how we can actually support the same. And really would like to say that we need to stand up for the integrity of Ukrainian socio-economic system as well. So this is one big part of having stronger Ukraine resisting the aggression from the east. So whatever we can figure out there is crucially important. So I think if you divide the economic system now in maybe in two big pillars, you have the services sector and the manufacturing sector, the largest ones, I assume. So Moldova has well done with the services sector. It's already relocating people to provide business continuity for the services sector. But we need to understand it's mostly consisting of women employees nowadays, as people male gender is being left back in Ukraine, and mostly women can leave. So our job would be how we can coordinate to keep those teams perhaps together as well. Again, there's a 1,000 employee company, and how we can keep the women gender employee group together in maybe one location as well. How we can coordinate this. Again, this will actually strengthen the actual continuity of the company as well, rather than having them, in different countries all over the place. So again, that kind of job family, work family integrity there is additional one. We can work maybe smooth this current Moldova's option as well. We have companies being approached us with the same idea. We have companies registered here, but their employees are back home, and we're trying to figure out, can we handle this so that we can get the whole working family together here in the one place. And of course, let's figure out how we can actually support the manufacturing industry. Most important, I think it's the backbone of any country, more or less. So we know there's heavy artillery action back there, and there's a lot of logistics and infrastructure like gas pipelines and so forth being suffered. So what can we do there? This is a question to the Ministry of Economy and the State Secretary office as well. Maybe we can figure some questions there at the end in regards to that. But when we have sanctions that EU and our friends, our partner countries are working against the aggressor, then maybe the goods that we are acquiring from east of, let's say, Belarus and Russia at the moment, can we switch those import goods to Ukraine as an additional countermeasures? This is a psychological thing as well. And maybe we can increase the demand for Ukrainian suppliers of the very same goods. That's an additional layer potentially that we can harness. And then when we look at the vulnerability of our own companies from our different nations and countries here, we must keep sustaining the contracts, if possible, to whatever extent possible, with the existing Ukrainian suppliers. Would it be raw materials or different grocery goods or whatever it might be? Because there is, of course, a lot of leverage in business, and if these contracts default for a month or two, they might just cut off the actual contract with Ukrainian suppliers. So how we as a government can guarantee or give export guarantees or loans to sustain those contracts. Again, that's an additional layer. We can all work together and try to ensure that our governments actually continue supporting and the business towards Ukrainian businesses, provide them export guarantees, and if there are defaults, perhaps our nation governments and budget can share this default, perhaps. That's a good few options. But again, services industry working together and how we can keep the morale of the people that are in this humanitarian crisis and are able to leave the country, how we can keep their morale up by keeping them in the routine, keeping them in this, keeping them busy, so they wouldn't mentally collapse in that sense. There's a huge effect on that. And so my question at the end here, I won't go too far, is again, what can be done with infrastructure and logistics within Ukraine when we talk about how we can ensure the continuity of your manufacturing sector, your backbone? Thank you.
Thank you, Raido. I think I look at one extremely important point from this intervention as well, that especially we have here trade promotion agencies, that what we can do regarding import substitution. That everything we import right now from Russia and Belarus, that we can do it from Ukraine. I think this is something that every government right now should do, internal analysis, and also talk to the companies who do that. This definitely, and I know that Danish also can talk about, the potential, maybe sanctions would provide. But before I go to Danish, maybe I ask Maria from Malta as well, from our sister organization in Malta. What would be your, let's say, recommendation how we can make, let's say, the best of it, of the situation? Maria, please.
Well, basically, thank you. I've just joined, so because I had some issues. Basically, there are various things which I believe can take place. Obviously, I think key here is communication, where we have to communicate both in terms of at state level, where there are governments which are involved, as well as areas where the entrepreneurs and investors level, because there will be the chance to discuss how best to proceed in this. I mean, we have to communicate together how best to go about it. It is a situation which we have never been in, so things need to sort of find a way out of how to deal with them. Obviously, we have to see how best to make it to the market. I mean, we have to find areas which are close to market. And I believe that something which is interesting is to try to find alternatives, so to ensure stability of supply and that the business will continue. Definitely. That's, I think, would be the most important thing, that there will be more collaboration between people, between businesses, and even between the different countries.
Thank you, Maria. Maybe now I think we have next the private sector representatives. I start with Danish. Maybe you take over.
Thank you, Viljar. And again, my sympathies go out to our friends in Ukraine. Our thoughts and our prayers are with you at this very difficult time. The topic that I really wanted to focus on as an international lawyer based in Washington, D.C. is the potential for collateral damage caused by Western economic sanctions on Ukrainian business continuity as well as humanitarian relief. As we know, as these conventional warfare rages on in Ukraine, Western countries are bracing themselves for an economic conflict that will impact trade, investment, supply chains. And as we've seen already, the United States, the European Union, other European governments, the Canadian government are imposing economic sanctions as well as export controls in response to the Ukrainian conflict. And these measures are primarily targeted against Russia, and they focus on imposing blocks and restrictions on certain Russian banks and vessels, Mr. Putin himself, persons that are in Mr. Putin's circle, as well as pro-Russian Ukrainian oblasts like Luhansk. And this is all in addition to prior sanctions that were already imposed on Crimea. Now, these sanctions are not intended to harm the people, or at least the innocent people of Ukraine, outside of those 3 oblasts that I've mentioned. And there are general authorizations that are in place with respect to the provision of food, medicine, medical devices, as well as certain personal remittances. However, notwithstanding all that, there are legitimate questions that need to be asked about whether innocent Ukrainians will still face collateral damage resulting from sanctions imposed by Western countries. And there are several reasons why that type of question should be raised. And there are certain measures that I believe that EDOs and IPAs should consider taking, and I urge them to consider, and I'll be going through that as well. Well, the first reason why I think collateral damage is a primary concern is that sanctions and export control regulations that Western countries are following and imposing, they can be fairly complex. They consist of general rules, exceptions, and then exceptions to the exceptions. And then also different countries have different rules on sanctions, and some countries are more stringent than others. And as a result, this multi-jurisdictional approach to sanctions and export controls can lead to confusion, especially for participants in the private sector who would like to support Ukraine in one shape or another. The second reason why this is a very important concern is that although sanctions are intended to focus on Russia, they're broad enough to apply to parties within Ukraine that have Russian affiliation. And from a private sector perspective, sometimes trying to distinguish between innocent Ukrainian parties that don't have Russian affiliation and those that do have Russian affiliation can take time, money, and effort. And private sector parties may not be willing to engage in that effort. And so it could have a chilling effect. These sanctions could have a chilling effect on actually helping the people that require assistance in Ukraine. A third area of concern, for me at least, is that if Russia succeeds in militarily dominating Ukraine and its supply routes, then invariably sanctions could block or limit Western parties from dealing with those Russian parties that control those supply routes. And so that adds another significant layer of complexity to this issue. And finally, a fourth area that raises some complexity in this area is that Western banks and financial institutions, they invariably take a very conservative approach to sanctions compliance, and rightly so. A lot of them are very concerned about money laundering and other legal risk. So they have a fairly high risk profile that they're trying to counter by taking a conservative approach. However, occasionally, financial institutions have demonstrated a low or zero tolerance for any risk. And as a result, sanctions can chill them with respect to engaging in financial transactions involving Ukraine that would otherwise be allowed by the sanctions regulations. And so that's yet another concern that comes when it comes to financial transactions. So what should EDOs and IPAs be thinking about in this area in order to counter the potential collateral impact of sanctions on innocent Ukrainians? The first measure that I would recommend is that EDOs and IPOs should become very familiar with the sanctions and export control regimes of the various countries that are observing them. They need to educate and train their constituents on the precise scope of sanctions and export controls so that you could counter any potential overreaction to these restrictions. A second measure that I recommend that we all consider is that EDOs and IPOs should be lobbying their governments, their respective governments, to provide user-friendly guidance on the do's and don'ts with respect to sanctions compliance. There are some efforts that are already underway in that respect, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done because these rules can be vague, they could be complex, and they could exacerbate, again, the chilling effect that sanctions could have on innocent people in Ukraine. And then finally, last measure is that I think EDOs and IPOs need to have strong, frank conversations with their financial institutions, with the banks with whom they maintain relationships, and encourage those financial institutions to implement programs that are focused on screening financial transactions in an efficient manner so that we don't delay the provision of humanitarian relief, commercial relief to the Ukrainian people. And so those are just my thoughts on this particular topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Danish. I'm so sorry also if I mispronounce the names. I think right now it's not too important. Thank you so much for that. I think sanctions are extremely important topic. I don't know, good thing or bad thing is that we still have time to figure out how to address those concerns that Danish just raised. These will be immediately after the conflict, the hot time will end, because sanctions right now are meant to create pain. Unfortunately, they're also paying to our side, the right side. This is exactly the very reason why sanctions are implemented. But I totally agree with you that we should start educating our companies and businesses and people about how to use those sanctions in the longer term to benefit us and Ukrainians. So that what was discussed before, how to replace, for example, imports coming from Russia or Belarus right now, maybe to replace it with Ukraine as a source in the future. Next, maybe Dejan, you can jump in and say also what has been your experience in North Macedonia, as well how we can make this situation more resilient from an economic perspective. Dejan, please. Your mic is off. Dejan, your mic is off. I see that your microphone is off.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for organizing this event and being part of it. Also, I want to express my sympathies to the Ukrainian people in these very hard times. I'm not sure if my network is stable because I have some disruptions, but I will try to tell what I mean. Our advantage as a civilization is that with this technological development we have, we really intervened it into time and space to converge, thus turning the whole world into a global village. And this meeting is also a result of these achievements, even in these difficult moments. Of course, this advantage sometimes could be observed also as a disadvantage, considering that the butterfly effects now are more applicable and more intensive. We just saw how the infection of COVID from one part of the world spread very rapidly and locked the whole world for 2 years. But of course, this also helped to have vaccines very fast with cooperation between nations. And because of that, I think that this current situation in Ukraine is not just local and is considered very seriously. And I think that there is no country, no politician, no business, even no ordinary people that does not feel worried and scared from this situation that happened now in Ukraine. So the war in Ukraine is not just and could not be local. Therefore, the impact of this war is regional and to the whole Europe from the beginning. Disruption in supply chains, disruption in trade, disruption in energy sector. We have in these circumstances, we are trying to find answers how to keep the business continuity, how to deal with supply chains issues, and how to overcome political strains on business relations. It is not an easy job, taking into account that businesses are driven by the basic economic principles of supply and demand on having resources, infrastructure, energy, and available workforce. But of course, in these times of war, I'm afraid that economies are switched to war mode, where demands and resources are focused mainly on war activities, infrastructure, and energy sector, as Mr. said, are the first one that suffer from military activities, and the workforce is easily transforming into refugees. So from there, it's crucial for the economic operators within the Ukraine, like governmental agencies, chambers of commerce, to have a special focus on helping businesses. Thus, here I want to propose creating a special task force for economic issues consisted of all relevant and available players on the ground in Ukraine, of course supported with services and manpower from all the agencies and operators of surrounding and friendly countries that wants to help. And really, there are a lot of countries in the world that are friendly in this moment. So the role of the Ukrainians will not be easy, establishing an open line of communication to all businesses, gathering all requests and suggestions, and with help of technology, we have an international organizations like International Trade Council, one platform to be created where all these issues will be filtered and operated by all involved, and hopefully finding solutions very fast by the networks of organizations and institutions we have in all of our countries. Of course, also the businesses must be supportive and empathetic to the whole situation and not to quit their arrangements and facilities with and within Ukraine. But if it's necessary, just to pause and postpone their activities for some short time. At the end, I want to say and to appeal is that I think and strongly believe that we cannot find solution to the problem if we think how to circumvent the long-lasting conflict in Ukraine, but to act to stop the conflict as soon as possible. That is for the good sake of the Ukrainian people, first of all, but also for the neighbors and whole Europe and the world.
Thank you so much. Next, I would give the floor to Andrea, but before I do that, maybe you can comment on also the short-term possibilities or impact on sanctions, and especially how we can use or handle it in the short term. But before that, I ask Anatolii, Alexander, maybe you can reflect halfway through also what you find so far important, what you don't, because maybe something is that we discuss here is completely relevant at this point, that it's not what you're working on right now in this very hour. So maybe you would like to direct us even better. So if any of you would like to comment on that, please do. If not,
let me comment. Unfortunately, I have some connection problems. I can't entirely follow everything that the speakers say because they're constantly breaking up. So in essence, as we said, like any direct aid, financial or the humanitarian aid could be highly appreciated. This is something that we really in the big need of. And in terms of like what I see is also like this is one of the opportunities that still needs to be explored much further is the implication of the energy sanctions towards Russia. And I think this will be, like the final nail into the box. So because while we're still struggling and having all these issues, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. It's just constantly dynamically taking part in everything. So the energy sanctions. This is something that the U.S. government is still hesitating to imply. And if anyhow you have connections to your governments and to the big businesses, to anyone who can also kind of circulate this message that this is the final bit of sanctions that could really help, because they are still using their energy trading companies to accumulate some profits to finance the war. They still have a number of clients internationally selling their energy resources. So this really needs to stop, because if we cut this, they will be left only with the ability of their printing machine, printing rubles, and not being able to mobilize anything from the abroad, not being able to mobilize their currency reserves. So again, I guess this is also one of the important things, that if somehow you can influence through your networks, through reaching out to your governments, this is something that we could also
Thank you, Alexander, so much. I can tell from the government representative that regarding sanctions, then everything is on the table. As you know, that when there was a second package of sanctions from the EU, it was maybe wrongly called the mother of all sanctions. Now it's already the fourth package has been approved, and we are planning the fifth one. So yes, everything's on the table. But Anatolii, you wanted to say something.
First of all, thank you so much for overall approach and understanding. I would underline understanding, because sanctions is something which damages your businesses. Everyone fully understands that. And that is why those sanctions were taking so long, and in Commission and different countries and their government were also thinking how sanctions would damage their businesses. From one hand, it's a loss for revenues. From another hand, it's a issue of democracy. But I would also compliment to what my colleague said. So we have to stop financing the war from one hand, with the bigger companies who are in the hands of oligarchs in Russia. But from another hand, they should think that sanctions, private sanctions, I would call them, of companies of refusing to send their goods to Russia, they cause a lot of damages to ordinary people, and those people start to understand whom they are supporting, actually. That affects actually the government, the state, and they start to understand everything when they come back home, and they feel it from their families. They cannot support the existing level of life, because they cannot go and to find iPhone or similar phones in the store, or they cannot buy parmesan or similar foods. That's what affects them very much. And then they can come back to their military bases and say that no way, this war is a way to the end. Let's stop it. So please think about that when you are thinking about private sanctions, not only waiting until the decisions of the institutions of the governments are taken. That's what I wanted just to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Anatolii. Totally agree with you. Mindful of time, Andrea, maybe you briefly, also your thoughts. Your mic seems off, or we can't hear you. At least I can't. Although on the screen we see that your mic should be on, but I couldn't hear you. Try again. It doesn't work right now. Maybe as you check it out, what's wrong? Maybe then I ask you, Joel. So what would be your thoughts on how we can help right now?
Thank you, Ambassador Lubi. Again, like my colleagues, globally extending our thoughts and prayers to our colleagues in Ukraine. Really appreciate hearing some of the thoughts from places like Estonia and Moldova and others. I've learned a few things from that. When we look at the Canadian perspective, it's a little different, but very much aligned. I mean, Ukrainians helped build this country around the turn of the century, and we've tried to reciprocate that relationship ever since. And first Western country to recognize Ukrainian independence. So, we're looking at this from a number of angles, as are everyone here in this forum. One, from an immigration perspective, any active files, the federal government has certainly stepped up to try to, extend even incomplete processes for folks who may already be in the country here in Canada, or those who are kind of on their way, trying to facilitate that. But certainly from a supply chain perspective, we going back to some earlier comments about the pandemic, some of the things that we have learned through that experience, I think we can apply here. Financial institutions and federal government globally should be prepared to re-implement some of the measures that were so helpful in mitigating the initial impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that includes flexibility on the part of financial institutions to help their clients, often with Ukrainian ties. Their personal or business finances are affected, obviously, by this conflict. There needs to be some degree of understanding. I know even our organization, as part of a provincial government in Canada, made all kinds of very, very quick adjustments to try to accommodate that and keep liquidity in the market. The federal government, should look at additional lending capacity to support businesses and add liquidity as well to maintain market functioning, because we're all dependent on these international trade agreements. I mean, Canada, no exception. We've had a free trade agreement with Ukraine since 2016. So it's big business for us, but more than that, it's personal. We have relationships, obviously, that extend into Ukraine, and happy to take additional questions offline as well, and appreciate the International Trade Council for putting this together. And Godspeed to our Ukrainian colleagues. We'll stay in touch.
Thank you, Joel. Andrea, let's try again. Unfortunately, we still cannot hear you. Maybe you log out and log in again. But then maybe I think we have the round. Now everybody has had a chance to speak. I see from the chat we have 20 minutes to go, and I want to stick to the time because we know that we cannot solve all these anyway. I think the most important outcome of this meeting is that the platform itself, ITC will coordinate that. We need to get the information, what Alexander and Anatolii said, out there, so that also different bodies put out information through their respective email channels and website and so on. First of all, what companies are needing. Second of all, what are the potential ways to donate? Because what I see from the chat also that people just ask, what is the small thing I can do? Individual as well. So the information is not out there still. But I ask you maybe from the wider audience also, if you have questions, not even questions, let me correct myself. If you have recommendations, I think this is the forum where we should provide potential solutions and not to raise the problems. So if you have any good ideas, what you have heard so far, how we can sort out those specific problems that Ukraine is facing right now, then please send it to the chat and try to read out. In the WhatsApp group, I see that, yes, it was about do's and do nots. This is what I said, that ITC is coordinating that all this information goes out to the websites and email channels. I see that Fernanda is talking about China. I don't even know how to comment on this technological thing. I think this is the long-term game. We need to see how the things roll out. Right now, I think the most immediate thing is that this war needs to end, and it needs to end fast. And we need to do our utmost to help the Ukrainian economy and population to survive this. So this is right now most important thing. Whatever we can do to facilitate that, I think this is the biggest concern. But as I don't see very specific recommendations right now from the audience, Tristan, if you see, please put in the chat. But from the panel, who would like to add anything to the conversation right now? Raido, please.
Yes, one thing that's been successfully kickstarted here is definitely how we can actually encourage and actually involve our private sector to support again Ukrainian people socioeconomic integrity, not to let it collapse. So again, whatever companies can produce, how we can encourage them to come together and work together to produce whatever kind of medical device or whatever else, how we can get this kind of volunteerism up in society, in our local economies. And for example, if you talk about education system, kids maybe perhaps are afraid to go to school. They need to do some sort of long distance learning or so we have a fantastic experience from the last few years of the pandemic, and we've developed fantastic solutions in all of our countries, and we could potentially work together to provide kids of different ages to have still schooling available at home. So again, their social integrity would remain strong and so on. They would have continuous routine, and they would have, in their normal lives, a little bit at least. So for example, in this weekend, our EdTech community in Estonia gathered together to develop solutions and translate solutions into Russian and into Ukrainian languages, so that the actual communities can actually be empowered by those digital tools to have a smooth switch to a home study sessions. So again, whatever ways we can harness our existing knowledge, private sector combined with our public sector, how we can support the socioeconomic integrity and not to let it collapse. Thank you.
Thank you, Raido. I think this kind of remote schooling is very, very important. I think these kind of solutions are crucial right now, that we try to keep the society up and running as much as possible. And Anatolii and Alexander have sent information regarding hotlines to our small chat, and we make sure that it's getting out there through Tristan as well. But Tristan, you wanted to intervene, please. Your mic is out, it seems. We cannot hear you right now. It doesn't work, but let's see. Let's try with Andrea again. Andrea, would you like to try once more? It doesn't work. It still doesn't work. Anybody else want to jump in, please, at this point? Yes, Anatolii, please.
Yes, I just wanted to briefly to follow up on one question. What has been raised is how the support can be provided. So one point was on export credits. Yes, that's a solution for the state to have export credits, and also to somehow to address the current challenges and also to rebuild them. Also, we do appreciate, and we had a good cooperation with UK in that regard. That fantastic decision. So, but nowadays I see also we should be aware that in current financial circumstances, and what Alexander also mentioned, we have some low incomes in sense of custom duties as well as in taxes. That means that we won't be that ready to pay external debt. And it might be one of the solutions to abolish an external debt for Ukraine at some stage, because you cannot just take more guarantees which are not guaranteed with anything. So that's also an important point of view, which everyone who should think about before going with additional loans. There is also legislation and also financial markets addressing to that. So that's a comment. So 2 points. Export credits, but also abolishing external debt. Over.
Thank you. I think these are extremely concrete and important recommendations. Andrea, also, if everybody can see the chat, so Andrea made her points there. Unfortunately, she cannot speak out through the mic. But Raido, you wanted to say something more, please?
Yeah, just the question that I was left open there at the beginning of. How do you manage your logistics of goods, particularly regarding to manufacturing industry and imports and exports? Is there anything our governments or anything we can do from outside the borders?
Yes, I think what Anatolii said. A couple of things, Alexander, as well. Maybe one topic, given we have 10 minutes, we haven't discussed, and I want to raise it anyway. Regarding the refugees on the borders and so on, all the services on the borders and beyond. I know that so much going on. There are lots of volunteers from different countries there to help. But the thing is that I know Alexander and Anatolii are focusing so much on the people who are in Ukraine. And we, as other organizations, we have to see also those Ukrainians who temporarily need to leave their home country what we can do in order to help this already 1 million plus people. So that I think also from IPCF side, we should put up there different information, what companies can do, what are necessary. I've been personally involved also, sleeping bags, water, things like that. Everything that, people need there so that we can help it. I think this is do's and do nots that every individual can do also individually. But Tristan, you're online again or what?
I believe so. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Sorry about that. Again, I express sympathy for our colleagues in Ukraine. I think one of the functional things that we can do as the ITC is over the next day or two, we will put up a separate platform for these offers and wants from the Ukrainian side and offers from our Economic Development Agency and IPA partners as well. From the small cities across the US that are asking specifically what they could do. I see a few people in the chat have mentioned, would it help if they write letters to Congress, if they would help write letters to the government expressing their support. I think that is one thing that they can do, but of course they can also rally their constituents within their own jurisdictions to support the specific humanitarian aid requests of the Ukrainian government and come together to meet those, because this is a broad problem that impacts not just the people of Ukraine, but you have Ukrainian diaspora globally, and you have Ukrainian companies globally that are also going to be impacted. As Hamid mentioned, there are investors in various jurisdictions that might be affected by these sanctions in terms of getting money in and out of Ukraine, and have employees and companies within their own jurisdictions that also need to be considered. That may have an impact on the small EDOs across North America and across Europe as well. So again, from our side, we'll put together this platform over the next 2 days, specific for the Ukrainian problem. We will share that information with everyone so people can post their offers and wants, and we will keep up the conversation. Also, if there is a need for an ongoing dialogue in terms of working groups, we can help facilitate that as well.
Thank you, Tristan. Anatolii, you wanted to say something, please.
Yes, I just wanted to say about supply chains. So far, I do believe that we still in first 7 days we do not feel that big pressure from companies, because they're still using their resources which were planned in previous stages. But I do feel that we will be also applying for additional resources, those which we cannot procure through eastern part and other channels which were used before. So that might be also a big support. Currently, we are looking at the possibilities for defense area, what might be their needs of raw materials and so on. But then I guess it will be also the issue of other types of industry and also economic sectors. This is from one hand. From another hand, what are the current needs which must be ensured? The bigger production currently is to tackle humanitarian catastrophe. And we applied, and I will send to the group that we are looking forward to have 20 million food packages for people. That means that you have to produce a really big number, and that's what must be already tackled. Is I don't know who might be procuring them, or private companies or international companies, both ways. But since it's also a demand on the market. So if at the same time a lot of companies would be searching for food, it means that the prices could go up because of demand. So please think about that. It's the same situation we have actually with the military equipment, and as I said, with armor, with helmet. So we are creating demand. That also affects the market, and also generators creates demand. So there is a list of ordinary goods which I have sent to the group. Those are perceived as humanitarian, and those I believe would be the increase in demand on the market in the EU and worldwide. So please refer to that. Over.
Thank you so much. Again and again, this is the most important outcome for me, that through Anatolii and Alexander, we make sure that all the relevant links and information is also on the websites of every single entity in this video as well, that we make sure that all the needs can be, let's say, channeled to all the parties that might help. And also, something that even maybe we don't have a solution, but we are working on it. I give you an example that Estonia is organizing, like during the COVID, another hack. We used to have global hack, so that startups actually try to find out-of-the-box ideas, how to solve specific practical problems. So that also Raido is from Enterprise Estonia, that can channel all the issues that might arise to also startups. Because I think what the Ukrainian government has done extremely well, that you have reached out to startups, but also to big tech companies like this Starlink. I think exactly what we need, that you just cry out what you need, and we do our best to address those concerns. We have 5 minutes left. Anybody from the panel wants to say something? Please raise your hand so we see it on the screen. Yes, Tristan, please.
Okay. Our colleagues in Moldova also mentioned the oversupply of products that they're now facing, and also facing undersupply of certain products. So directly impacting them are the supply chains in their own regions. For example, some of the economic development organizations might be encountering companies in their jurisdictions that were previously selling to Russian markets and now no longer have markets to sell to, and similarly may be looking to purchase goods that they had previously bought from Russia or maybe interrupted currently from Ukraine. So those are things that we'll also need to be looking to address in the very near future. And I think that impact of that will be seen quite largely.
Thank you, Tristan. In this case, what I wanted to sum up and say that most important thing is ITC and Tristan will coordinate all the information that reaches the relevant parties here. We make sure there are many practical recommendations already on the table that I wrote them down. I'm sure that all of you also did, like satellite phones, Starlink development, things like that, so that communications are up and running. Critical raw materials, generators, things like that. We definitely can do that and address those concerns. Then also import substitution, export controls, oversupply, undersupply, that we can redirect, helping our Ukrainian friends. Then also import credit, so that I definitely recommend that all the governments look into that at least partly we can give the governmental guarantees that we can buy things from Ukrainian companies. We understand the high risk, but I think this is what government can do. Remote schooling was proposed also. I think this kind of everything you can do remotely right now is definitely that should be encouraged. And definitely sanctions also in a long term, we need to adapt. They are there for long term, but I think that we should help the companies also to adapt it fast, so that it would provide us less pain, and also we can use the opportunities, and it has to create pain only to one country. This is Russia. And lastly, I want to say what Anatolii said on Alexander, that every little helps, that 1,000 euros can easily become 1 billion. Because what I very much liked, what your president said on the very first day of invasion, who decides? Lubi. It's all about people, so that we all can do to help. You see the slide as well. So that I want to conclude with that and say to Alexander and Anatolii that we are fully behind you. We are here to help. And of course, we cannot solve all the issues, but jointly as a group, as global support is behind you. So be brave, and Slava Ukraini.
Heroyam Slava. Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Heroyam Slava. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for your support.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.